Welcome to EDT Talks, where we discuss all things bodybuilding and beyond. Today's topic of conversation is going to be a little bit of an icebreaker, mostly because I am very new to YouTube. I'm very new to podcasting, and I feel like there's merit in telling a little bit of a story about myself, what brought me into bodybuilding, how I found my passion for the sport, how long I've been involved in the sport, and of course, what I'm currently doing with the sport of bodybuilding. Bodybuilding was something that I was introduced to at a very young age. Fitness itself was something that I was essentially born into. My mother had been managing fitness facilities since before I was born, and some of my earliest memories are of her using her Nordic track machine or doing aerobics classes or lifting weights because she made sure she had a home gym so she could train and make sure that she was able to watch her kids simultaneously. So if there's anyone that I remember who introduced me to the sport of bodybuilding before anyone else, it would have been my mom. And my mom played a very big part in my later years getting into bodybuilding as well when I found the sport myself. But my uncle, my mom's brother, was a national level bodybuilder in the early 90s before I was even born. And if I went through my phone, you can find a video of me when I was an infant and my uncle's holding me, putting me through mandatory poses, front double bicep, side chest. I'm 1 year old. I had no idea what was going on at the time. However, it was very clear that inevitably this was the sport that I would fall in love with. This was my career path that I would end up following, and it was really just a matter of time until I found it. I consider myself very fortunate in that regard because I found something I loved at a very young age. I was immersed in something that I would end up pursuing for what is essentially my entire life before I even realized that I was going to pursue it. And like many other kids, I played a multitude of different sports: baseball, hockey, even competitive 10-pin bowling. Before I found the gym, I was a national level 10-pin bowler, something that I actually was probably likely going to turn professional in, which is, it sounds silly, but it's true. But unprecedented circumstances forced me to step away from that respective niche, and I found the gym which my mom managed, which was coincidentally right upstairs from the bowling alley. I had already frequented this facility many times in my younger years before I started lifting weights myself, because the bowling alley was downstairs. My mom would close the gym, we'd go upstairs, help shut everything down, and I was surrounded by people who were training very hard. Lifestyle, athletes, competitive bodybuilders, everyone trained at this gym. It was a wonderful environment. People were friendly, people loved to train, and people just like to spend time at this gym. I actually started working in this gym at 14 years old, just wiping machines to make a little bit of money for the summertime. I didn't think much of it at the time, but after being there for a little while and getting a little bit older, realizing that lifting weights is pretty cool. This was definitely something I needed at the time. Growing up, I was a very shy kid. Like many people, we feel a little bit different. We feel a bit isolated. Some of us have a hard time making friends, and I was most certainly one of those people. And I needed something that I could hone my energy into, some sort of outlet where I could seek betterment in some shape or form. That's the beautiful part about working out. The beautiful part about bodybuilding is there are tangible progressions that we see that ultimately incite inspiration. You have a teenager who was just trying to find themselves, and they find this vessel that they realize they can control. And their efforts are what are going to drive their outcomes they're like going to put everything they can into this niche. That was me in a nutshell. When I found bodybuilding, when I found working out, I wanted to put every ounce of my being into this craft, much like I did with basically every other sport that I played. Anything that I took interest in my younger years, I put my heart and my soul into it because I'm a bit of a one-trick pony. When I see something that I like, I am fully immersed in it. My passion for it knows no bounds, and all these years later, bodybuilding has stayed tried and true from something that went from what someone might call casual lifting, simply because I didn't know much about it initially, to something that's become a full-blown career and likely will be a mainstay for the rest of my life. The first show I ever went to was in November of 2011, and I had already seen multiple shows on live stream, one being the 2011 Mr. Olympia on bodybuilding.com, but there is nothing like being at a bodybuilding show in person, because pictures and videos don't do athletes justice. You have to be there and see them in person to truly grasp what they have accomplished, whether that be professional or amateur. You need to be there live. And when I went to my first show, I was astounded at the athletes that took to the stage, and immediately I knew that I wanted to be a competitive bodybuilder. Young me, 16, 17 years old, most certainly wasn't ready to get on stage by any stretch of the word. However, he knew what he wanted. And at the same time, I had just begun working towards being a personal trainer. I had to be 18 to be certified, but I was well ahead of the curve in terms of seeking to understand as much as I could, so when the time came that I could be certified, I would be ready for it. I passed those courses with flying colors. It was very smooth sailing because I just loved everything that I was learning. It came naturally to me, and I began shadowing other trainers. I began taking on clients of my own free of charge for an extended period of time when I was first certified, because I wanted to gain mileage. And I can say with conviction that being a trainer and working with so many different people of all ages and all goals, and the many stories that people had to tell, and it was unbelievably valuable because you're working with people from all walks of life, and that experience lets you see things from a much wider lens. We need to have an understanding of different people with different needs and different desires, even if they're all pursuing bodybuilding simultaneously. Aside from just working at my family gym, I spent a lot of time there because there were a lot of competitive bodybuilders there. And very often, I would observe the competitors preparing for their shows. I would watch them pose. I asked them questions about what they're doing. Sometimes I'd even have the opportunity to train alongside them. Like I said, I wanted to learn as much as I could to truly grasp this newfound passion of mine. It actually got to the point where if I was at the gym, the bodybuilders would ask me to come downstairs, get a look at them while they're going through the routines, and if I had any feedback for them. And this is me at 17, 18 years old and still getting my feet wet and understanding the game, but very clearly, I had a knack for the game, and people were starting to see that. It was humbling, and it was exciting because a lot of these people were seasoned competitors. Some of them were novice competitors, but I kind of became the bodybuilding guy at my family gym, and it was something that I wore very proudly because it was very evident to everyone that I adored this game, and it was just a matter of time before I took on competitors of my own. Every bodybuilding coach dreams of being a bodybuilder first. I don't think there's a single coach in the game that didn't want to be that person under the lights themselves before they were the ones behind the scenes formulating the blueprints for their athletes. And I'm no different. My dream wasn't just to be a bodybuilding coach. I wanted to be a competitive bodybuilder. I wanted to be the one under the lights. I wanted to be the one showcasing my work. And like the many, I had bodybuilding dreams. I wanted to climb the ranks and be a great bodybuilder. The Mr. BC title, when it existed, was something that I was really keen on accomplishing. And unfortunately, that title was removed as federations changed, just as I was taken to the stage for the first time. And I stepped on stage at 21 years old. I did a 47-day preparation. Initially, one of my best friends was doing multiple shows in a single season, and this would have been his third show of the year. He realized it was not wise to do the show that he was planning on doing. This was about 6.5, 7 weeks out. And I had already been dieting alongside him, just for the sake of dieting. Being a bodybuilder, we go up and down. And I came to realize that, you know what? Maybe I can do this. And I ended up having a consultation with his coach. And I told her, I will do whatever it takes to be ready for this show. And my food got extremely low. My cardio was very high. I was posing every day. I was training twice a day. Honestly, still very blind to the fact there's a lot of stuff to consider when performing a bodybuilding preparation effectively. But I wanted it so very badly. I bit my tongue and I pushed myself to the absolute brink to be ready. And my conditioning was there. And despite the challenges that presented themselves in this process, I stepped on stage. I got to say proudly that I, Eric Dunnell, am a competitive bodybuilder. It has to be one of the bodybuilding highlights of my life, not just because I got to be a bodybuilder for the first time, but I got to travel for a show. I was traveling with one of my best friends in the world. It felt so real. You felt like one of the pros who was flying to another place, and they got their hotel room and they're getting their spray tan. They have their meals all packed. And for someone who never experienced that before for themselves, it was the most exciting thing in the world. And don't get me wrong, I've been in the game for many, many years now. I've been to more shows than I can even count. And as a coach, every show day is equally as exciting. Knowing that my competitors are ready, knowing that I get to check on them in the morning, go through their final rounds, and eventually see them on stage, that same passion, that same fire still is ignited in my gut when they're up there, just as it was for me when I was on stage for the first time. Over the course of my own bodybuilding endeavors, I have been both coached and self-coached. In my first shows in 2016 and 2017, I had a coach who gave me a blueprint and gave me the directions to follow, and I executed as they wished me to. At the end of the day, I did not want to have to think about anything. I wanted someone who knew more than me to give me direction, and it was incredibly valuable at the time. Nowadays, I am self-coached, not for the reason that I believe my approach is best, but so I can understand data from an objective perspective and also lean on my own intrinsic cues as an aid for this data. I want to know my own bodybuilding inside and out while simultaneously walking the walk alongside my own athletes. And although I am self-coached, I still have people in my corner with vast knowledge of the sport and its surrounding facets. I'll be honest, if it wasn't for people whom I consider mentors, I probably wouldn't have ended up being a bodybuilding coach, because personally, I needed affirmation from those who had greater knowledge than I to ensure that I had sufficient understanding of the sport to provide for my people. And over time, of course, that knowledge continues to be gained. That knowledge continues to be sought after. And with that, there are more people who I reach out to and learn from and invest in, because it is so very worth it. In the social media age of bodybuilding, there is so much information out there at our disposal, so easily accessible. And although this is incredibly convenient for those who are seeking a better understanding of bodybuilding, it can be equally as challenging. In consistent fashion, people are being pointed in multiple directions, looking for what is considered optimal, or being deterred from what is considered blatantly incorrect. And ultimately, we cannot speak in absolutes when it comes to bodybuilding or when it comes to science for that matter, because what we know as correct and what we perceive as correct can change over time because science itself is ever expansive. We can't speak in absolutes because we only know what's correct thus far. When it comes to coaching bodybuilders, we need to find the formula that not only suits them on paper, but what suits them in terms of their lifestyle, because life is incredibly dynamic. And I know for myself, what I might apply to my own bodybuilding would most certainly look very different to what I apply to my athletes. This is what makes bodybuilding so incredibly fascinating, and also why my experience as an in-person trainer was so useful in my application as a bodybuilding coach. It taught me very quickly that you cannot paint everyone with the same brush, and you have to take information with a grain of salt because it doesn't automatically apply to real life circumstances. If I exclusively studied the sport of bodybuilding alone, studying bodybuilding athletes, studying bodybuilding training, I probably wouldn't have the know-how that I gained through my in-person training. This goes to show that although bodybuilding is a very small niche, it is the furthest thing from a narrow scope. And with that, we have to wear many different hats as a bodybuilding coach to ensure that our athletes are served to the best of our ability. I am very thankful to be in this position to be a bodybuilding coach full-time. The majority of my roster as a coach are competitive bodybuilders at this point, something I always dreamed of. And although I do coach lifestyle athletes as well, they take their work equally as seriously as their competitive counterparts. And I think that is the most admirable thing because it means that they are very serious about making their goals reality. That's what bodybuilding is all about. It is seeking betterment, working towards it, and obtaining it. It really does go so much deeper than what we see in a mirror or the incredibly transient phase of being on stage, although it is incredibly exciting. I wouldn't get to be a bodybuilding coach if it wasn't for the people who put their trust in me. And I believe that a bodybuilding coach should be equally as excited for an athlete's goals as the athlete is themselves. Because an athlete is putting their trust in a coach. They are taking their goal, placing it in their coach's hands and saying, this makes up the vast majority of my day-to-day life. I have a major goal in mind and I trust you to get me there. Can you do that for me? A coach should look at this as the greatest compliment that they could be given. And with that, put their heart and their soul into their athlete's work. There should be a mutual respect for the work being put in on both sides because it truly is a team effort. And all that I can ask for is that my clients are willing to work and learn and grow alongside me as we navigate their goals. And with that being said, that is going to be a wrap on the second episode of EDT Talks. I appreciate everyone who took time to listen today, and we'll be back with some more stuff in the near future. Stay tuned. Have a great day.